All right. Hey, y'all. My name is Ridge McLeod. I work with Vector Choice IT Solutions. We are a IT managed service company that also focuses in cybersecurity. Um, Reading is very important to me. It's been important to me my entire life. I've enjoyed it since I was a kid, and it's critical in my job because I do a lot of looking at contracts. I am a business development manager, so I review contracts before they go to customers, as well as when customers have any questions regarding it. They send those questions to me. I look them over, I answer them to my best ability, and without being well read, it would be much more challenging than it is. So today, what we're going to be reading is Groundsel, which is one of my favorite books growing up. Here we go, by Fergus Hall. There we go. Get this started. The pictures are great. Over to the west, beyond the Mulberry Hills, lie the three counties of Wookey Hollow, surrounded by a thick briar wood. No one had ever imagined to penetrate more than a few yards into this forest. Father Time himself was no exception. Many years ago, he traveled the world, setting clocks in motion and regulating the seasons of the year. At last, he came to the edge of the tangled woods. Impossible to get through here, he murmured. I'll have to go the long way around. Wookey Hollow must wait. Of course, he really meant to return, but somehow there always seemed to be more important business on hand, and eventually he forgot all about it. There's the hollow. Thus it was that in Wookey Hollow the tick of a clock was never heard. Time stood still at summer, and no one seemed to grow much older. The air was particularly mild, and the fruit and flowers were unusually large. The ground rose gradually to a hill while overlooked the whole countryside. At its summit stood the strangest building imaginable, looking more like a greenhouse than a place in which to live. And this was the home of Groundsel, the gardener, who had the whole of Wookey Hollow in his keeping. Groundsel was famous for his wonderful ability to grow things. It was well known that both his thumbs were green and that he spent a lot of time talking to seedlings. Some spiteful folks said he looked rather plantish himself. In fact, the mild climate made his work very easy. Trimming the hedges and watering the plants were his main occupations. Life seemed almost perfect to Groundsel, except for Maggot Pie, the rowdiest, rootiest, most thieving magpie you ever saw. This troublesome bird stole the strawberries and rummaged in the raspberry patch, but his favorite trick was to gather up beaks full of twigs to drop down on Groundsel's chimney. At last, he went too far. Returning home one evening, Groundsel found his parlor covered in twigs and soot. Worse, still he noticed that the brass key to his grandfather clock had gone missing. Rushing outside, he found Maggot Pie circling overhead, a glittery object held in his beak. That's the last thing you'll steal from me, Maggot Pie, said Groundsel, pointing one of his green thumbs in the bird's direction. There is more to Groundsel's thumb than met the eye, he then intoned. No more your voice in the land, no more your wing on the air. Magpie flitter and magpie flee, no more you'll trouble me. Magpie circled above his nest and then flew off, soaring higher and higher until he was lost from sight. He set a course northwards, his heart bent on revenge. Turn me out, would you? I'll soon settle your harsh Groundsel, my lad, he muttered. He flew further north than he had ever ventured before. Eventually, the oceans disappeared and he was surrounded by darkness, relieved only by the occasional snowflake. At last, he arrived in the freezing wastes where winter dwells, and hopping boldly onto her outstretched hand, he said, there is land to the southwest which you have never visited. Foolish bird, she replied, how can that be? Maggot Pie explained the Father Time had forgotten all about Wookey Hollow, with the result that it was always summertime there. Those poor plants go on blooming all year round. They deserve a rest like anyone else, he concluded. At this, Winter ordered Maggot Pie to fly home. This state of affairs must be corrected. My autumn winds will speed you on your way, and in return you must guide my trusty servant, Jack, to Wookey Hollow. Jack Frost hopped on Maggot Pie's back, and with the help of the following winds, they reached the 3 counties in no time. Just before dawn next morning, Groundsel woke with a feeling that all was not well. His thumbs had turned blue. With difficulty, he pushed the front door open. Everything lay hidden under a thick blanket of snow. Never had he seen anything like it. In the distance, he noticed a spiky figure hurrying towards him. Groundsel didn't like the look of the stranger and quickly slammed the door shut. Seconds later, the letterbox blew open and an odd little man shot through in a cloud of cold air. No use trying to keep me out, he said. I'm crackling Jack Frost and I can squeeze through the tiniest space. Groundsel stood astonished as Jack whirled around the room, leaving a glittering white trail in his wake. Finally, he blew out the fire with a puff of cold breath and disappeared through the window. Groundsel didn't know what to make of it all and so decided to consult the wisest creature he knew. Pausing only to throw a coat over his nightshirt, he hurried off towards the village nearby. On reaching the church, he climbed the winding stairs which led to the belfry. There he found Walter the Owl roasting chestnuts before a blazing fire. You're wet through, Groundsel. Pull a chair up to the fire and tell me what brings you in your nightshirt, said Walter. Haven't you noticed all the white stuff out there? Asked Groundsel. I've just had a visit from a thoroughly unpleasant person called Crackling Jack. Do you know anything about him? Jack's presence always heralds the beginning of winter season, explained Walter, who had often seen snow and frost on his visits to the world beyond the briar wood. There's nothing to worry about. It'll go away in time, he added. At this, Groundsel looked down more anxious than before. You've forgotten something, he replied. There is no time in Wookey Hollow, so unless we can think of some way to be rid of Jack, this awful weather will go on and on. Walter racked his brains, but no solution came to mind. I can only suggest that you consult someone much cleverer than I, he said at last. Go to the clearing in Wookey Wood. At its heart is the ancient standing stone. Knock on it 3 times and ask for help. Groundsel thought this odd advice, but he was willing to try anything. Eventually, he found the ancient stone. He freed it of snow, dusted it down, and feeling more than a little foolish, rapped sharply 3 times on its surface. Nothing happened for a second or two, and then the rock gave a convulsive shudder. Groundsel was too startled to speak. What do you mean, coming here disturbing me? State your business and be quick about it, said a subterranean voice. Who are you? Asked Groundsel, and where are you? I am Merlin, imprisoned beneath this rock these hundreds of years by the lures of wiles of a sorceress. What do you want from me? Asked the voice. Groundsel explained why he had to get rid of Jack Frost. Well, that's easy enough, said Merlin. It's simply a matter of time. Wait until spring comes and the sun will melt the frost and snow. You'll find that Jack won't linger here when that happens. But time stands still in Wookey Hollow, said Groundsel in despair. Unless you can find an answer to the problem, summer won't return and nothing will ever grow here again. I'd quite forgotten about that, said Merlin. He had been so long underground that his memory was not what it used to be. You'll just have to find time, said Merlin, and persuade him to come to the 3 counties. He's the only one who can change the seasons. Although he didn't think much of the advice, Groundsel thanked Merlin politely and made his weary way home. He had no idea where to start searching for time, and besides, he was much too tired. Instead, he relit the fire and sat gazing into the orange flames. Suddenly, he remembered what Merlin had said about the sun melting the frost. Might as well try something else before setting out on another wild goose chase, he thought. He stoked the fire until it roared in the chimney, then closed the windows tight and blocked up every crack and cranny in the house. He waited. The room grew hotter and hotter. At last, he heard the sharp crunch of approaching footsteps, and Jack stepped inside. Groundsel leapt up and locked the door. Got you, he cried. Now you're going to stay here until you melt clean away, Jack. Jack looked about him apprehensively. Already a drip was forming on the end of his nose. He had to do something quickly. In one bound, he was at the fireside. You don't get rid of me so easily, Groundsel. See you soon, he called and leapt straight up the chimney, dislodging soot and snow and all manner of rubbish as he went. What am I to do? Asked Groundsel. That character's as slippery as an eel. Look at the mess he's made. Here's one of Magpie's old nests. As Groundsel was raking out the sopping ashes and twigs, he discovered the missing clock key. Maggot Pie must have dropped it after all, thought Groundsel. I'll take care he doesn't steal it from me again. As he replaced the key in the clock face, he wondered what would happen if he were to wind up. He had only turned the key a couple of times when there was an urgent knocking on the window pane. Groundsel looked round and Jack called, "Leave that clock alone. Don't make another move or you'll live to regret it." This warning only encouraged Groundsel to go on winding. I've obviously got Jack worried, he thought. There was a wiring of wheels as the old clock came to life. Suddenly its long, narrow door flew open, and out stepped Father Time. "Lucky that you sent for me today, Groundsel, my boy," he said. "I was about to set out for the planet Winnezulia. I probably wouldn't have returned for at least a century, but then I suppose this rascal Jack would have frozen you all solid." Father Time called to Jack, who was dancing with rage. "Now, Jack, you've been neglecting your duties in the Arctic. It's high time you returned." "Shan't," shouted Jack. "Groundsel couldn't make me go, neither will you." Father Time flicked a curtain to one side, and a strong beam of sunlight fell directly onto Jack. In less time than it takes to tell, he melted away until all that remained of him was a large puddle. "Dear me," said Groundsel, "I hope that didn't hurt." "Not a bit of it," said Father Time. "Some spring sunshine is all that's needed to send him packing. Bear that in mind, and you won't get into such a panic next year when he returns." "Do you mean to say that I have to go through all this upset again?" asked Groundsel. "Again and again until the world ends," came Father Time's reply. "Now that I've finally managed to visit the 3 counties, each season will have its turn. Summer will only be a few months long, so you'll have to work twice as hard in the garden. I'll leave you this calendar so that you'll know what to expect in the months ahead. It's a sort of map of time. You'll soon get the hang of it." He called, preparing to leave. "I must go on the wing now. Goodbye." "Oh dear," sighed Groundsel, going outside. "It all sounds very complicated." The snow was rapidly disappearing from the garden, and the flowers are starting to bloom. Hundreds of plants are sprouting. Groundsel consulted his calendar and found that all was as it should be. The calendar said that this was the time when things would be growing vigorously again. He was just reaching for his fork and trowel when a commotion on the roof attracted his attention. He ran out to see what was happening, and there on the chimney stood Maggot Pie, busily prodding straw and twigs into the opening. "Oh no," cried Groundsel, shaking his fist at the bird. "Some things in Wookey Hollow never change." The end. Groundsel by Fergus Hall. Have a good one, y'all. Again, my name's Ridge. I work for Vector Choice here in Atlanta. Hope you're having a great day. Bye, y'all.